So we're gonna be talking about Hantavirus today. It's a fun subject for me because I've been growing up. I'm not even. I'm gonna be dead ass. While I was growing up, the only thing I would be doing while I was young is research on viruses, diseases, and stuff. So this is like my autism spectrum right here. My autistic focus is specifically diseases. So we're gonna be going over hantavirus. So hantavirus, I'm already pretty familiar with to an extent. I have CDC pulled up. That doesn't mean I do not endorse the CDC, but it does have a good overview of hantavirus. I do want to go over. I do think it's a good overview. So recently, what happened was apparently that a cruise ship had a hantavirus outbreak that happened maybe a week ago or so. And since then, people have been panicking about COVID 2.0, blah blah blah. I don't think it's not that serious at all, and people are way overhyping this situation. But I still want to talk about it because it's fun. I like this topic. It's fun, and I think hantavirus is a very interesting disease to talk about too. So my specialty in diseases too is more like hemorrhagic fever. So think more like Ebola, Marburg, yellow fever, that type of stuff. Also, some other stuff which I would consider hemorrhagic fever, though not necessarily considered to be it, like lesbospirosis, especially in like I don't know about humans, but I think like in dogs, like lesbospirosis. Blah, 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 Lesbospirosis. Let me see if I can look it up. I would consider lesbospirosis to be a form of hemorrhagic fever, though it is it's bacterial, so that's why it would not be considered a hemorrhagic fever because hemorrhagic fever is a specific viral family. But I would still consider it to be a form of hemorrhagic fever because in mild forms, it's not gonna kill you probably. It's just all this crap, but if it gets down to the bad stuff, it can actually cause like meningitis, heart issues, myocarditis. We all know about that. Bleeding from the lungs and bowel bleeding too. Tarry stool, black tarry stool, usually a sign of intestinal bleeding, coughing up blood. So that's why I would consider like leptospirosis to be a hemorrhagic fever, even though it's not officially classified as that. I would consider it to be. And hantavirus is the same because hantavirus is very interesting because there are two types of hantavirus that you can get infected with. There is the hemorrhagic fever renal syndrome, and then there's the hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, or something. I think pulmonary. Yeah, I think it's pulmonary syndrome. I think. I could be wrong. It should be up here. Yeah, it is syndrome. So hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. And even with that, there are multiple variants. So like the few variants that I dug up because I don't remember them all by name. There's like Korea, they have the SEOV. There's the Pumala strain. There's the Dobrava strain. So like the HFRS, the hemorrhagic strain, has about a mortality rate of 1% to 15%. So it's not that bad, even though it's a hemorrhagic fever. You would think, oh, if it's a hemorrhagic fever, you're gonna die. It's game over. If it's gonna be like Ebola or Marburg. If you have it, it's game over. Not necessarily. Just because you're bleeding doesn't mean you are going to die. Though, you better pray it's not one of Ebola or Marburg. We'd much rather it be hantavirus, actually. And then there's the one that people are worried about is HPS, which is hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. And the specific strain is the Andes variant, which is more found in South America. While in North America, I think it's the Sin Nombre strain. I could be wrong about that SNV strain. So we are talking specifically about Andes because there is, yeah, this is where the research is a little tricky with the Andes strain because it is technically, it can infect person to person, but I would not count on it to become a global pandemic like COVID is because it can spread person to person. The chances are pretty low. I saw a figure of the infectivity rate being around 3%, which I don't know if that's true. I'm not a doctor. I don't have any official research on this, so and I don't have any sources to back up that 3% claim, but that's what I heard. It has about 3%. But I would still not, even with that, I would not consider it to be a massive worry for the general public. I guess people are more worried because it's more like cough and transmittable, and people are worried about the 8 week dormant rate. But even with all that, I would not really think it's going to be a pandemic. Like epidemic at most, if it will at all. Yeah, I don't think it. I kind of doubt it'll be a pandemic. There's a non-zero chance that it could become a pandemic though, because it can spread person to person according to official research. I still don't know about that in particular because hantavirus is really only spread through rodents, through dropping, through rodent feces, excrement, and all that saliva. So I would not really I don't really think it will become a pandemic or an epidemic. I just don't see that happening. Though I do think how the WHO handled the situation was really bad. Because it's like they allowed everyone to deboard the ship that was exposed to the virus, and it's known to go person to person, high lethality rate. Like, yeah, even though it's a very low chance of it ever becoming a pandemic, I would have still had them quarantine on the ship. Because, I mean, there's really no reason to send all these people back to their home countries just to risk getting more people infected with a disease that has a high lethality rate. I think how the WHO handled that was really stupid, but let's be honest, the WHO fucking sucks anyways. There's a reason why America left it, and it definitely has to do with COVID. So, yeah, when people say hantavirus, they are talking about the HPS variant of it, the more lethal version. So, yeah, here's some of the symptoms if you want to read it. Like, HPS is a severe, potentially deadly disease that affects the lungs. Symptoms of HPS start to show within 1 to 8 weeks after contact with an infected rodent. Early symptoms can include fever, fatigue, muscle aches, especially in the larger muscle groups, headaches, dizziness, chills, abdominal pain, and intestinal distress symptoms. 4 to 10 days after the initial phase of illness, the late symptoms of HPS appear. These symptoms include coughing, shortness of breath. Patients might experience tightness in the chest, lungs filled with fluid. HPS can be deadly. 38% of people who develop respiratory syndromes die from the disease. So, it's not a good disease. It's definitely not the one I'd recommend to get if you can help it. And then there's the HFAR version, which, while yes, it's less lethal, I still don't recommend to get it because it's not lethal in the same way HPS is. But the HFRS, it can cause long-term renal damage, which if you don't know what renal means, that usually means anything related to the kidneys. So if you have this, it can cause severe or long-lasting kidney damage. And here are the symptoms of the HFRS: the intense headaches, back and abdominal pain, because that's the kidneys trying to say they're dying. Fevers, chills, nausea, blurred. People have flush of the face, inflammation of red or redness of the eyes, or rash. Later symptoms can include low blood pressure, lack of blood flow. I mean, kind of the same. I mean, these two kind of hand in hand. If you have low blood pressure, then yeah, you're gonna have a lack of blood flow. Internal bleeding, that's what's causing the low blood pressure and the lack of blood flow. And acute kidney failure, which nobody really likes, which can cause severe fluid overload. And then severity of disease depending on the virus. I think it is the Korean version that's the least fatal, and I think it's I don't know where the other one is. Yeah, the Dobrava. I don't know if that's Russian. I don't know if Dobrava is Russian. That can cause a 15%, but generally, if you get HFRS, you're less likely to die than if you get HPS, but that doesn't mean you're not going to have long-term health issues. And I think HPS can also cause long-term breathing problems too. I'm not sure about that, but I think it can cause long-term respiratory issues. So now we have the overview of hantavirus. It's not that bad. I mean, it's bad, but I don't think it's not bad. I mean, like, people are kind of comparing apple to oranges here when we're comparing it to COVID. It's not. And then the thing that kind of shocks me the most is the amount of people denying that hantavirus is a real virus. It's a real virus. Like, I can assure you, hantavirus is indeed a real virus. It's just not as bad as... It's not going to cause a global pandemic. It has caused, like, sporadic epidemics, especially more in, like, Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Myanmar, China, areas that are not clean generally, because where there's filth, there is rats, and where there's rats, you have hantavirus and a bunch of other disgusting diseases that you do not want to get. I'm probably gonna get banned because, oh no, I'm being racist. No, it's true. Those places are not really clean, so they tend to get a lot more hantavirus outbreaks. Especially, I think, South America. I think you are probably more likely to get hantavirus in, like, Brazil than in Argentina, I think. But I know in Argentina you can. And apparently, how this motherfucker even got HPS in the first place was that he was bird watching in a fucking landfill. Like, why? Like, I heard someone say it's because, oh, there's a lot of food sources there for birds, so birds go there. But it's like, okay, but you go to a fucking landfill to bird watch? Go out to the fucking forest. Like, you're in South America. I'm sure there are at least 100 other places you could have been bird watching. But no, you chose the one place. And that place got you sick with some not very nice diseases. Not very nice disease. So, now we got the overview done. I want to watch a few videos. I have about 4 videos lined up. I think 4 or 5. Yeah, 4. So the first one I want to watch is from a reactor that I like to watch. His name was Charmix, but he now goes by Fresh Cut Slim. I kind of view him kind of like the IRL version of a VTuber, because he kind of has a kayfabe going on right now. So we're going to watch him first, and the reason why I kind of want to watch him first is because I want to get an idea of like a normal person's thoughts to the virus. Then after this, I do want to watch Chubby Emu's video, and then we're going to watch some of Dr. Campbell. And I like Dr. Campbell because he was one of the only doctors on the internet at the time when COVID came out, where he was like, yeah, we're going to look at the facts, but then he kind of saw where the COVID vaccine was going, and he was like, yeah, people probably shouldn't get it. So I do like John Campbell. I think he's pretty decent. I haven't watched him since 2020s, but I liked his work back then. So we're gonna watch him on Hantavirus. I have 2 of his videos lined up, so it'll be about 40 minutes of him, but it's gonna be a good discussion. So this is Fresh Cut Slim. Or if I post this as like one big long VOD on YouTube, I'm gonna put all the links to the original sources down below that I'm using. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, but you're using CDC sources, so you're a Jew Nazi." Like, bro, I'm not. I'm just using the sources that are available to me. And as much as I do not like the CDC, especially because of Fauci, I think that, like, just for basic virus overviews, it's not that bad. So yeah, we're gonna get started. So this is Fresh Cut Slim, and he's concerned of hantavirus turning into another COVID, is from what I gathered from watching like the first minute of this earlier. But I do want to hear what else he has to say. So we're gonna get into this reaction because I'm interested on what he has to say on this.
Hello, welcome back to another video of Fresh Cut Slim. Today we're doing a little rant video. This is a video regarding the newest virus that's going around.
One thing I don't like about Fresh or Charmix, I'm gonna call him Charmix because that's who I knew him as. It kind of censors a lot of things that are not necessary to be censored. But I do remember he's a very paranoid person. And in case he's watching this, I don't mean that in a bad way, but you kind of deleted your last channel because of your paranoia getting to the best of you. So I don't think you necessarily have to censor words like virus or, you know, like bad words. Maybe like the F-bomb or racial slurs I get, but I don't think you need to, because you're saying Hanta already, so you might as well just say virus at that point. But I digress.
I think it's Hantavirus. or Hantavirus. It's close to hentai, but I think that kind of virus you might get from visiting certain sites.
Probably.
Regardless, this is a new virus that has come out. Well, it's not new. It's been around
That's
for
funny
for
because virus. That's funny because virus is not even censored. It's like it was a point over it, but you can still hear the word virus. It's kind of funny.
while, from my understanding. Like, if you go look at the history.
Yeah, first document outbreak occurred in 1951 among soldiers in Korea, and researchers since retroactively identified outbreaks in eastern Siberia, Europe, and China during the first half of the 20th century. -AI, so that was from AI. Yeah, so it's been around for a while, and that's generally the consensus. But it's also, like I said earlier, it's not only just in Asia or Europe, it's also in the Americas. Just the Americas have a different version of it, which is more pulmonary focused, while the one in Eurasia is more hemorrhagic focused, if that makes sense. More renal focused.
History of it. Every year there's a few hundred people or something like that get infected.
A few hundred people, I'd say more like a couple 100,000. I think there's like about 200,000 cases each year of Hantavirus. And that's mainly because it happens in like places like, again, India, Bangladesh, where it's not the cleanest areas.
By it. So there's a history with this virus. And,
yeah, there is.
If you guys have not been, if you live under a rock, basically there was a cruise ship, and the cruise ship had an outbreak of this virus. Now, the cruise ship has since docked, and the people, I think there's 50 people still left on the cruise ship, but a bunch of the people who were, on the cruise ship have now flown, and they are in different countries. Some are in Canada, some are in the United States, some are in I think like the Netherlands, and I mean.
Yep, I know Israel has a case. I know Switzerland. I know America has a few states like Texas, New York, Virginia, New Jersey, and then I think a couple other places too. I don't know if Russia. I think Russia may have one. I don't know for sure if Russia has one. But I know quite a few countries that end up getting some of these people. But even with that, I still would not count on a global outbreak. I think it still would be controlled. Even if it were to end up as an epidemic going on, I think it would still be controlled pretty quickly. The only issue is, like, this is something I didn't touch upon, but so Moderna happily started developing a hantavirus vaccine. It says since 2023, but I think I did see somewhere it says that a finished product isn't likely coming anytime soon. I'm not sure about that. I mean, they did it pretty rapidly with COVID. But with COVID, it might have been because it was bioengineered, so they kind of already knew how it worked. But I think it's just a very interesting time that they bring up that Moderna is developing a hantavirus vaccine right at the time where there is a hantavirus outbreak on a ship. I think it is definitely suspicious, and I have my own thoughts on that, but I'm sure you already know what they are, so I'm not going to say them because I don't need to iterate it. But I did see somewhere that they had a breakthrough. I don't know if that's necessarily true or if the source was false, but I thought that was interesting to bring up that they so happily are developing a hantavirus vaccine, and they chose now to reveal that. Well, I don't think they just chose now to reveal it. They have been doing it for a while, but, just timing. But to be fair, it's kind of their fault for destroying public trust in health, so.
And there's a bunch of people everywhere, and a whole lot of them have tested positive for this virus. Now, the World Health Organization, or WHO, is saying that we don't need to panic or anything like that, and that this virus isn't as contagious, I guess, as COVID or whatnot.
Yeah.
And apparently it can only be spread through, like, saliva and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say, like, definitely rodent, but for person, yeah, I would say definitely if it is going to be transmissible by human, it would be either by airborne droplets from the coughing, because respiratory secretions, so I would say like coughing, air droplets, Saliva, bodily fluids, sexual fluids. Yeah, I'd say that would be about right if it were to be transmissible from person to person. So I don't think it's nearly as bad as COVID in terms of infectivity, but I don't think it's really that much of a problem.
Now, there was another virus a few years ago, right after COVID, and it was like something like monkeypox or something like that.
Yeah, monkeypox. Monkeypox, I don't know what happened to that. Of course, that was probably another round of fear-mongering. But it's also a very interesting pattern we've seen. So since the year 2000, about every 2 to 6 years, there's a new virus to worry about. So like in 2002, there was SARS, like the original SARS. In 2008, there was swine flu. In 2014, there was Ebola. In 2016-17, there was Zika virus. In 2020, there was COVID. And then there was Omicron variant. And then there was monkeypox. And then there was measles. And now there's Hantavirus. So you can kind of see a pattern of how they try and use diseases to stoke fear into the people, if that makes sense. That's kind of what they're doing. And they've been doing it for a while. And I'm sure there are probably more examples from even before SARS, but I just don't have them on top of my head right now or don't know them.
And I remember people were freaking out about that. And this, I feel like, I don't want to, fear monger or whatever, okay? But why is everyone on this friggin' boat testing positive? If it doesn't spread easily and it's only in,
I don't think everybody tested positive, and I just added note there. A good majority have, or not a good majority, but I know about maybe like 12 have tested positive. The only thing is the other ones should definitely be quarantined. I would say still quarantine them because they still do have the possibility of transmitting person to person. So again, though it's not nearly as bad as COVID, the infectivity rate, and it's probably very low, you still don't want to take that 2%, 3% chance that it's going to hop to another person because that's going to get them sick and that's not going to be very fun for them either. So I would still say quarantine these people as if you would do with any other disease, honestly.
contact with.
But to be fair, they should have quarantined them on the ship and just not let anyone leave. But I don't know if they knew that they had the virus before they left the ship, or if they found out afterwards. That's the one crucial detail, which I don't remember. Maybe if somebody knows, you can tell me. But I don't remember if they tested positive after they got off, or if they tested positive while they were on it. But I don't know.
People through saliva or intercourse. Why are all these people testing positive? Was this a gang boat? Was this a boat full of swingers or something?
This was
why are there so
Epstein
many
boat.
people testing positive? That doesn't make sense. If the virus doesn't spread easily, why do so many people have it? And I don't want to fearmonger, freak out. But the mortality rate on this virus is like 40 to 45%. It's so high.
It's high. Again, it's high. That is true. But the infectivity rate is extremely low. So that's why I just would not worry about it.
And they're saying
the bigger problem, honestly, is not even the people, but whether or I don't know this about Hantavirus. I don't know if there's like a mouse or like a rodent that comes in contact with the infected fluid. If that rodent can get it, then spread it to others. I don't think it can. I don't think it goes that way. I don't think it works that way. But I think it's something to note about too about this problem.
Saying that, it doesn't spread easily, but yet so many people have come down with it. And the incubation period is like 40 days or something, which means that you don't even know if you've been exposed to it for 40 days. So by that point, you've come in contact with so many other people. Am I the only one thinking this is a little bit of a... Now they've spread.
As we also did have a Hantavirus case, I think a couple months ago, an actor, his caretaker had gotten HPS and died, and then he died, and then the dog died. But I know that we did have some Hantavirus case. I had a Hantavirus case I think last year, sometime it was, and she died of it. But there's no fucking pandemic because of it, so.
They're no longer on
But to be fair, I think that was the Nombra strain, but I'm not sure.
the boat. They're in like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 different
That was in
countries.
New Mexico, so.
Which means that if this virus...
Can I see? New Mexico Hantavirus. Death. Yeah, okay, so that was last year. Was Betsy Arequa, wife of actor Gene Hackman, died in Santa Fe, New Mexico after from Hantavirus HPS. 7 cases were reported in New Mexico, so you see it's in New Mexico too. I think it's the Nombre strain. Let's see. Does New Mexico have Hantavirus Nombre or Andes strain? I think it's the Nombre strain. It's a Nombre strain, not the Andes strain. That's what I thought, because Andes is South America, but still something to be noted. That's for later.
It is spreading easier because it's mutated. Who knows how bad this is gonna get? This is like, you know, 2021 all over again, or it could be. I'm not saying it is, but if they're saying it doesn't spread easy, but it is spreading easily, what's going on here? Something isn't adding up. The math isn't adding up. 2021 and 2022, and you know, that time, that was horrible.
Thanks for the follow, stranger. I do not know who you are. Keone Ren, that sounds like a good name.
Well, I hated that. But this is like, you know, this could actually be a lot more serious if it blows out of, you know, if it gets to that point, because the mortality rate is like 40%. You know, in 2021, that virus, the mortality rate was like very low, right? Like only the elderly and really sick would actually get.
Yeah, COVID was very. I don't even know if COVID's death rate is even 1% anymore. I kind of already know Hantavirus. I'm just kind of talking over the subject. I did earlier do an overview of the virus, though, a bit. But I don't know if... What is COVID's mortality rate? I think it's below... I think it... Isn't it like below 1%? Yeah, it's below fucking 1%. It's like... It's not even one... It's in the 10th place of the decimals. Or no, that's hundreds. That's the hundreds. Big scam. It is not. I can guarantee you it's not a scam. It actually originated in Korea by, I think, the Hantan River. I think it is. Korea. Hantan, is it? Hantan, here, Hantan. Yeah, Hantan. Near the Hantan River, South Korea. As all good diseases, they always originate near a river. Like Ebola originated by the Ebola River. So, like all good diseases.
Pushed over the edge. This is a dangerous friggin' thing. Like, they should have been kept on the ship or moved directly to, like, a quarantine area and had no contact with anyone else. You know? There was, like, a video of some guy who's on the ship who's, like, crying, be like, we just want to go home. I understand that, but do you also want to go home and, like, 40% of the population if this virus does spread as easily as it at least seems to?
There's a very long history. And this is definitely not related because, like I said earlier, it's definitely not about North Korea, South Korea, because this is not the Korean strain. Because, here, I'm going to open up the thing here. I'm using the big spooky CDC, but it's kind of important. So, the version that South Korea has is the hemorrhagic fever version. The one that we have right now is the HPS version. The HPS is the pulmonary version that causes like severe pneumonia and all that. The one you find in Korea is a hemorrhagic fever, which, believe it or not, is like 3 or 4 times less fatal than the pulmonary version. I mean, it can cause some pretty bad stuff like kidney failure and internal bleeding, but it's not nearly as bad as HPS. But I don't think it's related to North Korea, South Korean relations. I think it's related to Moderna wanting to make money off a vaccine. And this is not even going to become a pandemic. An epidemic at most, if it does, but it's not going to become a pandemic. The pandemic chance is extremely low on this virus. Very low, actually. So... I don't think so.
Like, okay, so you got a rat or a mouse on a boat, and that's how this virus spreads, because it spreads through rodents, apparently. But
The origin of it was way more stupid than that.
It can also be transmitted human to human, and apparently it doesn't do that well. Then why do so many people have the virus? What was going?
Well, So I'm gonna answer this because he's asked this before. Why so many people got infected with it? The reason why I think people got infected with it is one, because one retard decided to go bird watching in a fucking landfill in Argentina for whatever reason. The second reason is you're on a ship. Do you know how big a ship's space is? Like, let me see. What model of cruise ship was the Hantavirus cruise ship? I'm just gonna call it that. I don't remember the thing. It was a polar class cruise ship. So thanks for the follow, Soul Wayfarer. Based name, by the way. I guess you're a Slipknot fan. That's based. Interior square feet. So you have to deal with 300 square feet with like 200 people on that ship. And then this virus, the Andes version in specific, transmits human to human. And you're in a cold environment where people's immune systems are being suppressed by the coldness already. And then you have the people rubbing their hands on shit, sneezing everywhere. Yeah, of course there's going to be an outbreak of hantavirus there. And like in a normal country like United States, like if you're in the United States, if you're like in Virginia or something, where it's warm, the temperature is very, very normal. You're a healthy person. Where there's sunlight, I don't think it's a problem. It's not going to become a pandemic. It's not. The only reason why it became a little bit of a outbreak on that ship was just really bad circumstances that kind of made a perfect storm for the virus. But it's definitely not for it. I guess we're going to go on to the next video. The next video I wanted to watch is Chubby Emu's video on Hantavirus. Now, I don't exactly know his political stance on viruses and all that, because I know I like his medical videos, but I don't know what he thinks specifically about COVID, and what he thinks about it can either credit or discredit him, in my opinion. But we're gonna check out his video of it because it is an exposition of how hantavirus is, pretty much. So there might be a little bit of graphic footage, but I'm sure it'll be fine. It's
Hi,
fine.
Dr. Bernard here. I'm going to cover a case of hantavirus that was published in literature in 2025 from the same country where it appears the 2026 cruise ship incident originated from. I'm going to cover it as written and give you perspective of how we would see this case as if it came through our hospital. I'll tell you a little bit about hantavirus and why I don't think overt panic is warranted in context of the 2026 cruise ship
definitely
incident.
not warranted.
And I'll just tell you my personal advice right now. It's very simple, and everyone should have been living it anyways. 1. Wash your hands often, before and after you eat, after meeting with people. And do this as the first thing that you do when you get home. Wash them thoroughly for 20 seconds and do it twice in succession. Think as if you're a surgeon and you're about to do surgery on someone. 2, if you feel sick and...
I think like number one way to stop spreading diseases is just wash your fucking hands and take showers. If you do those two basic things, the amount of diseases that will occur will drop immaculately. Also, just clean up after yourself. Be clean. You don't need to litter. You don't need to shit on the streets. Just be a normal person. Clean after yourself. You'd be surprised how many diseases would be curb stomped by that.
And or have a fever, stay at home. And 3, if you have trouble breathing, go to the hospital.
Yeah,
Simple rules for life in general. I highly recommend them.
Very true.
JB
I agree with
is a
this.
52-year-old man presenting to the emergency room sweaty and nauseous. He had hypotension, hypo meaning low, tension referring to blood pressure, low blood pressure, and he had a fever. When doctors measured his blood oxygen saturation, it was 89%. Under 90 needs emergency medical attention because it means that the body is suffocating. They see him sitting there
We definitely don't need to nuke the ship, but what they should have done, in my opinion, is that they should have quarantined them on the ship, because again, it's hantavirus. It's not COVID. It can infect people, but the chances are extremely low. So there's really absolutely no risk of a pandemic, in my opinion. There's a small risk for an epidemic, but even that is very, very, very small, within like maybe like 1 or 2% chance of that even happening. But I do 100% think that they should have quarantined on the ship anyways, because that's just what you do.
Confused, obtunded, and unaware of where he was. These symptoms suggest that his brain is starving of oxygen and something terrible is happening. A chest x-ray reveals that his lungs are filled with fluid. This prevents the oxygen exchange from the air into his blood, explaining why he's suffocating.
Make me big
Fuck
again
this ad.
now.
Even at our ugliest.
There we go.
A blood test confirms he has hypoxemia. Ox referring to oxygen, and emia meaning presence in blood. Low oxygen presence in blood. It's not just low saturation, the oxygen actually isn't there. But why is that fluid in his lungs? He might be volume overloaded. Water has flooded into his body and has nowhere else to go other than to squeeze into his lungs. Or his lung blood vessels have been leaking, or there's an infection in his lungs. Some of these will take some time to confirm, but doctors need to do something now. JB was given supplemental oxygen. Air is only 21% oxygen. Vastly increasing the amount of oxygen per inhalation should ameliorate some of the hypoxemia, and this buys some time. But as the hours pass, it stops working. JB's oxygen saturation decreases. Something very bad is happening to him. And it's happening very quickly, and it's getting worse.
By the way, just want to point out, the 3 people that have died have experienced exactly what's going on in this video.
He's transferred into the intensive care unit. JB is sedated. A tube is placed down his throat so that a machine can breathe for him. But as the hour passes, JB goes into shock. His blood pressure suddenly drops even more. This means that blood can't get to all of his organs, but most importantly, it can't get into his brain. If oxygen already wasn't getting into his brain adequately because he had hypoxemia, then adding severe hypotension on top means that there's seconds to minutes left before his brain suffers permanent damage, because oxygen makes energy production happen in cells. Normal blood flow and breathing helps clear out the wastes produced by brain cells. When that mechanism no longer functions, JB's brain will cease to exist. 2 medicines were immediately given. The first one constricts his blood vessels and forces his heart to beat harder. The second one tells his kidneys to hold on to water. These should push his blood pressure higher, but it wasn't enough. Shortly after his ICU admission, JB stops making urine. His kidneys have completely shut down. Doctors had to hook him up to a dialysis machine so that the body waste that would have been urine can be filtered out of him. A chest CT scan confirms JB has pulmonary edema. This is the fluid that's in his lungs, and there seems to be more now than when he presented to the emergency room. But this higher resolution scan gives more insights. It kind of looked like JB had a fungal infection, but this was borderline. If it isn't fungus, then for sure what's happening isn't a typical infection. Other parts of his lungs had collapsed. Doctors start him on multiple antimicrobial agents to cover a wide variety of pathogens. It's still not clear that this is absolutely an infection, but if it is, one of these could start working some and buy some time to figure out why this much fluid has flooded into his lungs. They write a problem list, and they need to rule each one out to make a diagnosis of what's wrong so that they can treat him properly. Hey, quick question. Have you learned something from this video so far?
I'm kind of surprised that they, as soon as they saw the... I mean, I don't know exactly what they did, but I'm surprised they didn't run blood tests or, like, try to get some fluid from somewhere to test for a disease, especially as soon as they suspected it. Because I don't know, does Hantavirus appear on blood tests? Does Hantavirus... Let's see. Yeah, it does appear on blood tests, so... I don't know if they took blood of this patient. I'm surprised if they didn't, especially as soon as they suspected of a virus or some type of pathogenic disease, right? So I imagine they would take blood to figure that out.
If you have and you aren't subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate it if you did subscribe and come back to see the video that I post next month too. I've made 1 video a month on average. Stories. It's one of the best ways. I'm thinking he had just come back from a trip in Argentina before experiencing a fever for 7 days. These are important to know because there's only a couple things that this could be. It's not a previously known chronic disease, and fever means that it could be an infection. That involves fluid in the lung, and that means this could be pneumonia. The problem is pneumonia usually comes with a productive cough. he didn't have that. And when he was tested for respiratory bacteria and viruses, they all came out negative. So this isn't pneumonia.
That's interesting that it came out negative. I wonder why. I wonder if he explains why. I'm curious.
Fever could also mean inflammation. If not pneumonia infection, then maybe this is autoimmune, the immune system attacking the body. Shortly after ICU admission, JB's kidneys failed. That could be the immune system attacking it. When that happens, the immune system can also attack the lungs simultaneously. And this pulmonary capillaritis, itis meaning inflammation, capil from capillary, which is the small blood vessels in the lung, and pulmonary referring to the lungs, can result in diffuse alveolar hemorrhage. Alveoli being the air sacs surrounded by capillaries where oxygen exchanges into the blood. The bleeding would be the fluid that's flooded into his lungs. And the bleed would be getting worse, coinciding.
So it kind of sounds like HFRS in a way. I don't know if I think there is a little overlap with the two, but it kind of sounds, since it's also attacking the kidneys, it sounds like an renal syndrome instead of an HPS syndrome, in my opinion. But since the lungs are involved, it has to be HPS. But it's just interesting that it's also attacking the kidneys as well.
Fighting with his kidneys suddenly shutting down in the intensive care unit. But the reason why this isn't likely is because nothing indicated that JB had autoimmune disease. Blood tests didn't say it, past medical history didn't show it. So this was unlikely, leaving one final problem. JB had fluid in both lungs, without evidence of pneumonia.
Right, fluid in both lungs and kidneys shut down. Let me see. APS. Does it cause kidney failure? Yeah, it causes respiratory failure. That sounds like HRF. That sounds like HFRS. Because it's causing hemorrhaging. According to this guy, there might be hemorrhaging going on. The kidneys failed. There's severe fluid buildup in the lungs. That sounds like HFRS. Am I stupid? Yeah, severe fluid overload. That sounds like HFRS. What? I thought this video was supposed to be about the Andes strain. This sounds like this sounds like maybe the Dobrava virus strain. Maybe Dobravavirus, if I had to guess one. Internal bleeding, lack of blood flow, low blood pressure, acute kidney failure. Am I retarded, or is he talking about HFRS? Which is a very different this is not the one that's currently going on. HFRS is not HPS. Yeah, it can go into lungs. And this is fucking HFRS. This is not HPS. What?
This means that his lung blood vessel.
Does the Endis strain have an HFRS version? That sounds like HFRS. I'm curious because there's kidney failure and there's low blood pressure. And it sounds like there's bleeding in the patient, but they caught it in Argentina. I'm a bit confused. So it says FRS or it says HPS? Because HPS does not cause kidney failure. But HFRS can cause kidney failure. The low blood pressure, the lack of blood flow it can cause fluid, it can cause edema in the lungs. This sounds like HFRS. Rare overlap. Well, very rare. Some studies have investigated potential long-term renal impact in HPS, but is not commonly associated with the acute dramatic kidney failure seen in HFRS. So this is what but in this case it's acute. because it suddenly starts on in the ICU. So this sounds like HFRS, not HPS. But how would he get HFRS in fucking Argentina? Because Argentina has HPS, not HFRS. What? I'm confused.
Were leaking. He fell into shock when he arrived in the ICU. Both of these together suggest viral infection.
That suggests to me, it sounds like HFRS. I don't know if I'm retarded, but that sounds like that sounds like hemorrhagic fever renal syndrome.
Given that he had recently been in Argentina before he had the fever, this suggests one virus that wasn't tested for when doctors looked at pneumonia because it doesn't cause pneumonia. Rather, it suffocates the person by flooding their lungs with fluid. This one is called Hantavirus.
I'm gonna watch
In the
rest
intensive
of
care
this. I'm
unit,
curious.
doctors order serologic and molecular testing for Hantavirus. This is not a standard test because this is not a common problem in most places on this side of the earth, but it came out positive. What's Hantavirus? The original name
Yeah, that's pulmonary, but are you sure it's not the FRS version?
was Hantavirus from the Hantan River in Korea. This exact location tells us how this was rediscovered in modern English. In 1951, United Nations troops stationed by the Hantan River started reporting an epidemic hemorrhagic fever that would end in kidney failure. At the time,
Right.
they didn't know what it was that caused it, and they didn't know how it was happening.
But the pulmonary version doesn't end in kidney failure. It ends in respiratory failure.
7 years later, Dr. Ho Wong Lee was able to identify what caused that hemorrhagic fever. He found out it was a virus that's first hosted in infected rodents before it being passed on to humans. He named this the Hantavirus. It looks like it had been described and alluded to in ancient Chinese texts from thousands of years ago, describing inflammatory fever diseases that ended in kidney and lung disease. For sure, this appears to have been a known entity to locals for centuries. When scientists looked closer, they found that this virus had been circulating around a much wider area than previously thought: Korea, China, Japan, Russia, and getting as far as Scandinavia. And when we started developing the technology to sequence genomes, we found out that many viruses in different geographic locations were genetically similar to Hantavirus. They were related, though just slightly different, and this is where the Hantavirus family comes from. One reason why there's a distinction among family members here is that the illness caused by each virus can be a little bit different. Overall, they either cause kidney failure or they cause cardiopulmonary failure, just like in JB's case. And at least during the time comes from. One reason why there's a distinction among family members here is that the illness caused by each virus can be a little bit different. Overall, they either cause kidney failure or they cause cardiopulmonary failure, just like in JB's case.
But this one...
And failure or they cause cardiopulmonary failure, just like in JB's case.
Cardiopulmonary failure. But it sounds like there's also acute renal failure. Or am I retarded? There is kidney failure. It sounds more like HFRS. Like, maybe they did the tests and they think it's HPS. But it really sounds more like HFRS to me than fucking HPS. Alright, so I didn't think it was right to leave one of the questions I had unanswered, so I'm going to answer it. So, during the Chubby Emu portion, during the whole time I was thinking it was HFRS. And while I was not necessarily wrong for thinking it was, I do think now it was HPS. I did a little bit more research on it because I was really curious on what was actually going on there. So what was going on there essentially was he did have HPS, and the main reason why I can say he was is because his original reason for being admitted into the emergency room was hypoxia of about 89% oxygen. And then later in the ICU, he started having that acute renal failure. So it seems like with the pulmonary syndrome, it causes extreme respiratory failure first, and then later in a more severe, when it gets to a more severe stage, then it can cause multi-organ failure. So renal failure is definitely one of them. One of the things that can cause, but it can also cause other organs to fail too, which is something I didn't know until now. And then the HFRS, it usually has renal failure first, and the respiratory issues are not nearly as bad as pulmonary syndrome, if that makes sense. So I was wrong here, and I'm going to admit I was wrong, but I did my research, and I just wanted to clear that up. It was HPS, not HFRS, though. Can you blame me for getting confused last night on that? But you know what? I made it right. I did my research while I was editing the video.
And at least during the time of Dr. Ho Wang Li, it was found that most all of the viruses in the family were transmitted to humans through airborne particles of infected small animal feces. You inhale them, and then it gets you. However, there was a pivotal discovery that linked the Americas with these Eurasian hantavirus species. On May 14th, 1993, a 19-year-old man was driving through...
Oh, interesting. Maybe it's not the Andes strain, but maybe it's like some rare strain where it kind of has a combination of both. Because it's true, if there is a... Because these are still both Hantavirus. So at some point there had to be one mutation that bridged the gap, which would most likely cause both pulmonary and kidney failure. So I wonder if he had a very specific strain that kind of bridged the gap in the evolution. Maybe that's what happened.
The four corners to go to his fiance's funeral when suddenly he couldn't breathe. He had no known health problems. He was a marathon runner. He stopped at a local gas station.
Yeah, one thing I learned is fucking the fucking west of America, especially in like Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, California. If you want to get shit like the Black Death, or if you want to get like Hantavirus, then you want to go to those states. Because I don't know why, but for some reason they seem to have a bad issue with that.
Because regular people back then didn't have cell phones, and then he called for help. An ambulance arrives, but before it does, he collapses because he can't breathe. In the emergency room, they find that fluid had filled into his lungs, and within minutes of arriving to the hospital, he's not alive anymore. This didn't make sense. Someone this young and healthy shouldn't pass away like this. New Mexico office of the medical investigator was contacted, and the investigator at the time was totally shocked, because a few weeks earlier, a young woman nearby had also passed away in the same manner. She was previously healthy too, but then suddenly she had trouble breathing, collapsed, and then it was over. At autopsy for both patients, doctors noticed that there was nothing structurally wrong with their lungs. They just suddenly filled with fluid, and then their lives were over. Something very bad was happening. That 19-year-old man's fiancée, he was going to her funeral. Why did she pass away? Investigators found out that she was only 21. She had passed away only a few days earlier. She was also a marathon runner just like her fiancé and previously healthy. During her autopsy, a different doctor who was present, he immediately remembered a recent consultation that he was a part of, involving two more young, previously healthy adults who collapsed after suddenly not being able to breathe, and then subsequently passed away. Both of those patients had unexplained pulmonary edema. New Mexico Department of Health sent a letter to Arizona, Colorado, and Utah because it...
Yeah, that's the only reason why I would say it's FRS, because I think that FRF does cause this. I think it can cause pulmonary edema. Yeah, it can cause pulmonary edema. But HPS doesn't cause kidney edema or acute kidney failure. Like, it does say it can cause kidney issues. It's mild and usually not acute failure like this guy has. So I'm still really thinking it's HFRS and not HPS.
Appeared that there was an occult illness happening right at the border, and they received responses, multiple cases of a mysterious illness that all presented the same way in previously healthy patients had been reported all around the four corners, and even worse, it was 80% mortality. CDC was asked for help. They tested autopsy samples for gene samples of various pathogens, and it was here where they saw something that had never been seen before. Public health officials went to homes of the deceased. They found rodents in and nearby the buildings. They collected them, tested them.
So if you have rodents in your house, you better get those mice trapped up or buy a fucking cat to kill them before you get fucking Hantavirus.
And found that these rodents had the same pathogen genetic material that these patients did at autopsy, meaning that something was passed on. When they were able to grow it, they discovered a virus that was previously an undescribed species of Hantavirus. This is the first time a cluster of infections was formally described in the Western Hemisphere. But there was a problem. Infected small animals were the only known vectors to hantavirus known at the time, and massive quantities of small animals, enough to mutate an entirely new species of hantavirus, can't easily get from Asia to New Mexico, meaning that this species had always been here. But why was it showing up in 1990?
Has it always been there? I think not necessarily always been there, because if it's a hantavirus, so it's either two ways. Either America brought hantavirus to Korea, or Korea brought hantavirus to America. Or am I stupid? I would think that it would have had to been true, because it's part of the same viral family. So I would imagine that it would have had to cross eventually. And since it was discovered the Korean War, Americans were very heavily involved with the Korean Wars and the Korean War. So I wonder if maybe like a asymptomatic, maybe mice that boarded U.S. cargo planes or whatnot, maybe boarded and started infecting the mice here or something like that. And then it kind of just evolved depending on the environment. I don't know. I'm just guessing. This is just throwing darts at a board, hoping it sticks, I guess. I don't know if that's the phrase, but it definitely had to be brought over. It had to be introduced into the environment, whichever way it came in from, and then it would have had to mutate. So I just wonder if this specific person has like a cross pattern between HFRS and HPS, or if he had just FRH or HFRS and they just misdiagnosed it as HPS.
93.
Because to me, I'm still very hell-bent on it being HFRS.
Sam, are you cheating on me with another pet store?
No.
Not too far from the Four Corners, there were persistent rains all over the western United States in 1993. The rivers that feed into the Mississippi River started overflowing, and after several months, the water became so much that the Mississippi River itself flooded. This was one of the worst floods in U.S. history, but where did that rain come from, and what does that have to do with hantavirus? On July 16, 1990, there was a magnitude 7.8 earthquake in the Philippines. 2 weeks after the quake, local residents reported steam was coming from a nearby volcano. Over the next several months, successive earthquakes were felt until April 2, 1991, when that volcano, Mount Pinatubo, erupted. It sent 20 megatons of sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere and triggered a volcanic winter. The global temperature dropped half a degree Celsius for 2 years into 1993. This created abnormal conditions for excessive precipitation in North America, causing a river flood. But also, the Four Corners also had massively increased rains.
Interesting. So I wonder if that had a play into the virus mutating.
And this is where it connects to hantavirus. In spring of 1993, a sudden influx of biologists came into the Four Corners region to study. The rodent population had exploded by 10 times because there was an increase in local vegetation due to increased rain. Public health officials at first didn't realize this, but once they made the connection, they realized with more rodents, it means that there was more chance for rodents to get infected, and more chance for an infected rodent-associated disease to be transmitted to locals. Meaning hantaviruses had already existed in North America, it's just that we hadn't directly observed it yet for multiple reasons. In 2025, a high-profile case of sin nombre hantavirus was reported. That's the one from the 1993 outbreak. Betsy Arakawa, wife of Gene Hackman, had passed away in her home in New Mexico, while his dementia had progressed to the point where he didn't realize
Yeah, we talked about this earlier.
what was happening. She very likely felt ill for days after her first exposure and then suddenly couldn't breathe, and it was found to be hantavirus. It is endemic in this region of the country. Finding her case is a legacy of this direct observation of hantavirus in this region. But in 1993, this region still wasn't quite aware of it. And why? Well, this is not a densely populated part of the country. If cases had shown up in the past, they were probably one-offs that were hard to identify without multiple cases showing a pattern. You can see it happening in real time as the 1993 outbreak was unfolding at first from the 19-year-old man. It would have looked like people suddenly collapsing for no reason,
See, so
but with 10 times
all
more...
these people were collapsing from HPS, or from the cardiopulmonary version. They were collapsing. They had severe fluid edema in their lungs, and they died of suffocation. But this particular guy, he has renal failure and low blood pressure issues, which, yeah, the low blood pressure, you could argue, is contributed by the pulmonary edema. But just by the acute kidney failure, I'm really pointing it to HFRS.
More rodents in an area than normal, clusters of cases will draw attention and allow investigators to connect ideas. But when it was identified in 1993, scientists wanted to know, is this North American species different than the hantaviruses found in Asia? And if South America has different small animal species, and this virus is transmitted through infected animals, is it possible that South America has different hantaviruses too? And the answer to both was yes. Argentina, 1995. 2 people in a rural area in the south suddenly stopped breathing. At autopsy, doctors found hantavirus genetic material in the lungs and the liver. When they compared it to known hantaviruses, it was distinct, and they named this one the Andes virus. This was interesting because if it was spread by infected rodents, well, South American rodents are different from North American ones. And while they didn't know which rodent could transmit this Andes virus at the time, it wasn't very long until they found out that Andes virus can be transmitted from human to human in a small cluster of infections in the same town where the virus was first found the year earlier. This brings us to 2026. A group of people boarded a cruise ship in Argentina, near where Andes virus is known to be. 5 days later, one of the passengers started feeling ill, and 5 more days later, he wasn't alive anymore. No one knew what happened. When the ship arrives at St. Helena Island 13 days later, on April 24th, his body was examined at the hospital. His wife, who accompanied his body, wasn't feeling well. The next day,
St. Helena? But they said they were also in West Africa. I think West Africa has HFRs, doesn't it? Oh, I know, this is about the cruise ship one. Okay, never mind.
she took a flight from St. Helena Island to Johannesburg, South Africa. When she lands, she collapses at the airport and then passes away. The cruise company hadn't confirmed that these deaths were related to a medical situation on board that boat. But the same day, when the wife passes away, another passenger on the boat becomes ill. He's evacuated to South Africa and admitted into the intensive care unit.
I would not medically evacuate someone to South Africa for medical treatment. Especially from St. Helena, you're probably better off just taking them to like Germany or something. South Africa does not have the best healthcare. I'll just put it like that.
5 days later, on May 2nd, another passenger aboard the ship has difficulty breathing before suddenly passing away.
By the way, I love South Africa. My favorite Vtubers are from there. Nitya.
The patient...
So not a diss on South Africa, but I don't think that South Africa would have been the #1 choice for a medevac.
Still alive in South Africa, doctors are able to confirm that he has Hantavirus. World Health Organization is contacted, and they were able to identify 7 total cases of Hantavirus aboard the ship, and including the deceased as of early May 2026. And it was here where the WHO was able to confirm this was Andes virus. This is the one that can be transmitted human to human, and evidence was already mounting before it was confirmed that this was the causative agent. Started from Argentina, the ship's doctor, who would tend to those who feel ill, started getting sick himself and had to disembark the ship to get medical treatment. Andes virus is a different hantavirus species than what JB likely suffered. And the reason that we know this is because Argentina has multiple hantaviruses, unique to different regions. Andes virus comes predominantly from the south. JB got sick in the north. But despite all of this, the illness is still more or less the same in that there's a sudden cardiopulmonary collapse that follows a period of time where the patient will feel sick. So that's why it's important for you to get medical attention immediately if you feel sick, especially during times when alarm bells for hantavirus have been raised in your local area. There's no direct medicine to give for hantavirus cardiopulmonary syndrome as of the time that I'm...
Again, kind of fear-mongering right here, Chubby, because, I mean, the chances of anybody getting hantavirus like this is kind of low. Like, if, yeah, of course, if you feel sick and you can't breathe, go to the hospital, but I don't think Just because you come down with a little bit of an illness doesn't mean you have fucking hantavirus.
Publishing this. It's supportive care. It's the tube down JB's throat for the machine to breathe for him. If that doesn't work, then it's redirecting his blood to a machine that oxygenates it for him and pumps it back into his body. Over time, it's known that the body does eventually clear out the virus, taking out the fluid that fills into the lungs and allowing the person to be able to breathe once again normally. And all of this is possible if the person sought and received the correct care in time. So there's a few things here to know. Some people are concerned, and rightly so, about the 2026 cruise ship outbreak because there's passengers who disembarked the boat after the announcement that someone had died on board. I haven't been on a cruise for a long time, but I can't imagine if I would be okay knowing that there's a dead body on the ship for my vacation for 2 weeks before anyone does anything about it. Where are they keeping the body? Is it in the room next to mine? I hope not. But if this virus can transmit from human to human, and that virus was circulating among the passengers, and there are passengers who left early, is it possible that they could be spreading it out to everyone around them in their hometown? That's a question everywhere in the news right now. And it's possible, and the only real experience that's known about this comes from southern Argentina in the 1996 case cluster, and a second one that happened in 2018. One person had gotten infected. They were ill while at a birthday party, and people at the birthday party who sat close to this person subsequently got sick 17 to 24 days afterwards. One of these people had a very active social life and went on to infect 6 more people before he was symptomatic. And 16 days after symptom onset, this person stopped breathing and it was over. His wife had a fever while attending his wake, and 10 people who came into close contact with her.
So it still sounds like it's pretty low.
During the wake.
I mean, considering it all, it sounds like it's still pretty low to infectivity rate, and you have to be close to them too. It's not like if you're standing in the same room, you're gonna get infected. It sounds like you have to be like touching butts to get infected.
Became ill 14 to 40 days.
Or like spitting distance.
Afterwards. And in total, there were 34 people getting infected and 11 deaths from this 2018 outbreak. Something important to note from this. No healthcare worker who treated the infected patients got infected themselves. And medical teams are exposed to every single body.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in the photos, you see some people wearing like fucking high gear PPE. They have the full hazmat suit going on. Then there's other people who are just wearing gloves and a mask, or some people who just don't wear anything. So it's very weird.
Fluid possible during treatment. They did have protective equipment on, but it wasn't uniform across all the different hospitals. Now keep in mind, we're speculating whether or not human-to-human transmission comes from saliva droplets and other bodily fluids. Some of the transmission...
Honestly, it sounds like it's more based on bodily fluids than it would be from respiratory droplets, if I had to really guess.
Described between patients in this paper is a little ambiguous. For example...
Yeah, because that's ambiguous, because it happened at a birthday party, and I'm assuming there were kids there, so kids are kind of messy. They put their fingers in their mouths and nose and crap, so to me it sounds like it's probably more bodily fluid transmitted than pulmonary, respiratory aspiration. I think that's the term for... Is it pulmonary aspiration? Pulmonary aspiration. I think it's aspiration. Expectoration. Expectoration, I guess. That's the term I was looking for. Expectoration. That's the term I think I was looking for.
This patient is reported as his daughter. This method of transmission is a valid topic to bring up. However, I hope...
As his daughter. Yeah, I think I'm really guessing it is bodily fluid. Right, I think it's bodily fluid. That makes sense too, because like if you're... I don't know if they're like guests who got sick. I know passengers did, but it would make sense too if some of the people on the cruise ship who got sick were staff members too, who like came in contact with like dishes and stuff that people ate from, and then they got it that way. So I think it is actually more likely to be bodily fluid transmitted than expiration, you know what I mean, like air droplets there.
something in here was reported incorrectly. And also simply saying hi. Very possible Andes virus can be transmitted through saliva droplets like sneezes, but we just don't know enough right now. But what we do know is that the difference between this and 2020 is that back in 2020, we had never seen that before. It was kind of similar to...
Not necessarily we have not seen it before. We have not seen the COVID-19 variant, but we have had the coronavirus as a family for a very long time. And I think it was discovered like back in the 60s, so it was not a new it was not new. The virus variant was new, and that was because that was it was very high chance it was bioengineered. So of course it's going to be something we haven't seen from a variant, but the coronavirus is a family we have had for a very long time.
It's something that we saw in 2002, but also not really. And the unknown part in the very early months of that year was the scary part. But this Andes virus has been known for 30 years. The 1996 and 2018 cases demonstrated that the virus had no mutations in that time period. And it looks like in the 2026 situation, it hasn't changed much again. That's not to say it won't change going forward, but we can only act on the information that we have now. If it changes, then adjust accordingly. The point of this is that we know what to do in the cases of hantavirus, and it's good that the alarms have been raised so that should a case come through, the medical team will know what to look for. What is particularly dangerous is when the medical team doesn't know what they're looking for and diagnose hantavirus as something else, like a pulmonary embolism, atypical pneumonia, or pulmonary capillaritis. That's why I showed the differential diagnosis in JB's case. This is unlike January through April of 2020, where that pathogen really was something new. This isn't new. We've known about it for decades in America, millennia in Asia. This is a data point that one should be aware of. Take note of. You should take the precaution.
I do genuinely believe JD had the HFRS, the renal version, because it just doesn't make sense that the HPS would have caused acute kidney failure. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I think he had the hemorrhagic version. It may have been misdiagnosed as HPS because of the Argentina factor, so they may have assumed it was HPS, but do we know whether JD had traveled to Europe or Africa, Africa, or Asia? I don't know if it's in Africa, but like Europe or Asia before going to Argentina, or before he got sick? Do we know that? Or could have he gotten it from some other source? Or maybe there's a hemorrhagic variant in South America and we just don't know about it? Just a couple different ideas, but I am going to say it was a hemorrhagic, the HFRS. I mean, yeah, he is a doctor, but I do generally believe it's HFRS. So now we got that. We're going to go ahead and watch Dr. John Campbell. This is